Baruch Hashem. In other words, blessed be the name. And right now, it's basically a double negative G period in terms of the daily periods of the cycles of life, yet still, it's a perpetuous time for the observation and the realization and the creation of what could be described as ideal working solutions or upgrades, like mechanical, technical systems and systematic upgrading and methodology that makes it possible for existing processes that are systematic to operate much better and be optimized. And a quote unquote, a time for solving mechanical problems. Now, if we apply this to life, seeing that life is cyclical and totally orderly, as in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the Creator, blessed be his name, geometrized and actually made all of creation to be absolutely perfect forever. And also invested the potential, therefore, into it in the first place. Remember that fact, friends, guests, visitors. The universe and the world that we live in has already been invested with the potential from a divine, eternal source to actually exist in a state of absolute and increasing perfection. That is reality. And that's something that's so important to remember and to realize and to think about, because that type of a realistic mindset and comprehension of, say, the universal order, life becomes very, very, very good, generally speaking. Okay? So at this moment right now, we're talking about a few things where you literally have a reality that it's technically explained by the most accurate and trustworthy, historically accurate documents, such as the Holy Bible, and also the basic knowledge thereof is also expressed or similarly communicated, actually, within other orders in existence, such as the Rosicrucian order, and the explanation of the cosmic reservoir. So this is something that's actually real important to focus on and to know about and to think about, because basically what we have is that the world, the universe, right, creation, is actually sort of equipped with a providential, like an eternal reserve, or like an eternal storehouse, that stems from the Creator. In other words, there's like a treasury, or like a storehouse that the universe has that is filled with eternal substance. At the same time, the entire universe is permeated by eternal substance. This has been referred to as the cosmic reservoir, if I'm correct, inasmuch as that the information that I have been receiving is also accurate. The idea is that the Creator basically provided an eternal amount of potential for creation. And we know that this is true. This is explained along the lines of what could be referred to as, if you look into a book called the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, it will be described as eternal substance. And if we were to look into the the holy biblical explanation of this, it would be something like, so the Spirit of God, the Ruach, or the breath of life, eternal Spirit of God, along those lines, yet moreover also, more specifically, something like the universal substance, okay? And if I am correct, maybe I should read again first. What I'm getting at is that there is legitimate existing knowledge about the reality of how the universe is actually structured and just how much positive potential exists that is ready to basically manifest. And some of what I'm talking about is directly related to something that appears to be, and I hope that the information rendered to me is correct, a teaching from the previous imperator of the Rosicrucian order, H. Spencer Lewis, rest in peace, where he had a teaching in some book or somewhere in some publication from the Rosicrucian order, right? Really good work about how the human being has an aura, and the human being has, is actually transmitting frequency. And it's true, we are creative, emanative beings, right? We sow energy, positive vibes, good, holy, sacred, and pure, legitimate thoughts, right? Good things, good vibes, good ideas, good state of mind, right? You got a good vibe, you have a good aura, a good energy field, you good vibes. So you're sending that, and that's actually getting emanated out into the environment. And we see this too. People smiling who are legitimately happy and blessed, they have a positive emanative auric field around them, And so what happens is the aura, apparently, and this is true, is that it's composed of the existing thoughts, feelings, emotions, your meditation, can keep it positively attuned, stay in a positive overall operational mode, right? Through daily discipline, right? And so on and so forth. You have a positive signal that you're sending out. And apparently, and I've experienced this, so I know it's true. All of us, probably all of us have, based on what your auric field or your, almost like a radio transmitter, based on what you're actually sending out into the universe, right? It's getting registered by the eternal source that's out there, but also everywhere at the same time. It's in here and out there, but it's almost like you're programming this universe from within with your auric field and your vibes, ideas, and everything. And it's exactly what you send out, almost like typing in code. That's getting registered. And this is also Kabbalah, actually, because we're in the first step to Kabbalah, too, because you're sowing, first of all. And then that gets registered. So you're sending out signal. That gets registered from the cosmic reservoir, or let's say like the universal storehouse of eternal potential, covering everything that can be, manifest, happen in every human life, every universe, heavens, earth plane, world, existence. Like there's an eternal storehouse out there. And to us, that makes sense because that would be, it's almost like the eternal Spirit of God, or the capacity that the Creator has through his almightiness to have all this might and this providence, like eternal providence, almost like, sort of, in a universal essence too, that's eternal, something like that. What you send out, first of all, is getting registered, and then it's getting processed and put together in the absolute perfect way, and then that gets sent, or you receive, or Kabbalah, literally receive that, yet in an upgraded form. So there's an example of this, and this is true. The key point here that is it's so magnificent and it's so good is that we actually exist in, let's say, a heavens and earth plane, earth, human, and life activity environment, right? In creation here, as little, creators, children of God, right? Where there is eternal potential that was already invested in creation before we were created, right? To the point where there's a capacity that is eternal for every human life, everything, the entire universe, and all that we can comprehend, like everything that the Creator has and can have and make and whatever, and so on and so forth, to actually be extremely good, to be like super all the time. That is actually getting close to the reality of how it's programmed. And there is an example of this. It's proven if you look in let's see, forward, wise-oriented retrospect at your life, and you realize, actually everything always went better than I expected. Yeah, that's true. Moreover, this thing about the visualizing and the transmitting and the sending out ideas into the cosmos, into the universal field, and these things then later becoming manifested much better and also upgraded, right? This can happen during a day. This happened to me the other day. It's a real thing. I went out and I had an ideal idea of a journey that I really would like to go on. But it was like, well, if that happened, that's almost like too good. Yet it's possible. And sure enough, what happened that day is I actually went on a journey to a place that like was the best thing that I could envision happening that day. And it happened. I had a beautiful idea about it. I sort of let it go, right? So I had this in my auric field or my mind's eye. I let it go. And it was divinely provided in return very rapidly. And it was actually magnificent. That's how this works. Another example of this, it reminds me of you're looking for a certain thing and eventually you find exactly that thing except much better and in the most ideal circumstances that even better than you imagined, right? This happens all the time. So this is this thing about, I think it's got to do with manifest. So first, creative emanation from us human beings, our energy field, and then that being registered by the creative eternal storehouse of potential, or what's apparently referred to as a cosmic reservoir. If I'm correct, that makes sense. And that thing gets rendered, or you reap or receive or Kabbalah that thing. Now, of course, there's a safety mechanism installed because it's only the good things that actually really happen, so to say. There's some type of a divine safety installed that's good too, because it kind of optimizes. You send something out, an idea, right? You visualize it, you sow it, it gets divinely registered, processed, and upgraded, and sent, and you receive it. That's how it works. It really is true. The velocity whereby this works, this is apparently subject to the cycles of life, just like everything in your life is subject to the cycles of life. In other words, so even whether it's physical or metaphysical processes in your life, they all have a certain time when they work good and when they work and how they work. So that's another subject, but basically there's a reality that has been, I'd say, re-realized, because we sort of always knew this, yet had to really re-realize this, is that we're actually living in a state of being human beings where with the right way of living or the right mode of operation and a certain discipline in accordance with the practice of self-mastery, it's possible to live in a way that leads to basically, it's the most beautiful, the magnificent life all the time, increasingly. That's actually the truth. And that's how it is, quote unquote, predestined to be. It's actually how it is. Now, obviously, most viewers and people seeing this will ask themselves and think, hey, look, if that's the case, why aren't we living in a perfect world yet? Why isn't it like heaven on earth completely? Well, it's because of different levels of spiritual evolution, right? You know, mastery and being able to practice it daily, that comes at a certain level of maturity and through diligent effort and, you know, divine guidance and divine reward and re-reward. So not everybody is practicing what I'm talking about. Although it's operational, it's like what I'm saying is there's something going on that actually everybody is doing this because we're all creative beings, that you have to get a grip on it. What you imagine, visualize, dream, think about, speak about, you emanate it, becomes manifested gradually. And it's true. It is true. And it's the same thing for everybody. Now, the key is to get a handle on that, to understand how this process works and to be able to guide this and master it, right? So some will say this is the law of, what's the word? Oh, the law of manifestation, or I think the term that's used a lot of the time is, it's like visualization technique and manifestation. Something along those lines. Yet, whatever the official teaching from the Rosicrucian order is, that certainly is the perfect example. I think that I recall correctly what I've shared here, and that I'm accurate and on point with my description and information presented. So there's this thing about how the reality that we exist in is actually perfect. And it takes clear, intelligent, and true vision to see and understand that, and then to be able to operate this system of how we create, and our life becomes how we, you know, visualize and see it and emanate out there and get it rendered to us. And it's true. It is a real thing, and it exists. And it's as if there's a discovery that if you fully comprehend this, one of the most simplest examples of this is actually comparable to the way that all human beings start up as, you know, as happy children, basically, inherently, and, you know, are so creative and imaginative, right? I remember, like, as children, we have just totally positive attitude, creative, full of, you know, magnificent positive vibes, and visualizing and dreaming about things, and like super positively charged, right? And then creating cool things, right? It actually happened that way. It's how it is. And then gradually over time, the problem is the reason why this mechanism is sometimes inhibited is because of the, I would say, the interference from external sources or human beings with different levels of spiritual evolution or mastery, and or either discipline and practice of self-mastery or not, to be very blunt. So in other words, the world and the different people in the world at different levels of progress also have an effect on the progress that is, quote unquote, made by us, even in our upbringing. In other words, we have to learn to be masters of our destiny, practice self-mastery as soon as possible. Because the sooner you start doing that, the better it is, and the better it gets, the longer, right? It's the best. So It's just that simple. The thing is that the thing about the way that this, so it's like visualization, emanation, and then registry into the universal eternal production capacitor, and then that gets registered, it gets upgraded, and it gets sent to us, right? The most basic way to understand this is the thing of where you had an idea about something, you had an objective that, seemed like the best thing that could happen, didn't know how. I can see it in your mind's eye. How is that going to happen? Like, that's great. And sure enough, you visualize it, you let it go, and sure enough, it happens, and it gets manifested in an even better way. A little bit later, takes a little while. Takes a little while, has to do with the life cycles you're in and the ones that you're in right now and what the time it is. So there's a perfect divine timing that's governing everything. That's another important factor. But the reality and the discovery of this reality, if we were to express this in holy biblical terms, it would be describable as something like that you're keeping your faith in, let's say, in the goodness of the Creator and His eternal providence. This is sort of what that describes. Yet, also a parable from the Master of all Masters saying, we reap what we sow. And the thing is, another thing, so much talk is out there about Kabbalah, and the word is everywhere. Yet the word Kabbalah is actually saying to receive. Before you receive, it would be good to send, so that you send the right thing and receive the right thing, right? It makes sense. It's interesting because, it's interesting because you hear about Kabbalah so much, yet Kabbalah is receiving. Obviously from God's mercy, we're permanently receiving God's mercy, keeping us alive and, operating creation and all this. That's like, you're actually always Kabbalaing from the Creator, from His goodness. Hallelujah, right? Yet, this thing about Kabbalah is like, that's the second step. The first step is emanation, or sending the right things in the first place, and then Kabbalaing the right things. And another thing, it's actually a universal truth, and it is absolutely the case that what I'm talking about is actually something that is an operational, natural, inherent process in everybody's daily life. In other words, we all sort of, we all have the inherent ability to create and to kind of determine our lives. And everybody does this. In very blunt terms, either consciously or subconsciously. Because we also have to examine the so-called subconscious, like baseline affirmations and assumptions and habitually formed parameters that we have. Because that goes on too. I can actively comprehend this, right? Oh yeah, the universe is filled with eternal positive potential. All I have to do is think positive, emanate that, and then I get that and the reservoir reads that and meets that out to me, right? Okay, I get that. Yet, what if, okay, and this is important, what if beneath, a little further in the subconscious mind, so-called, it's like the only way to describe this. I'd rather not use the word con. Really, I have to say how it is. In the subconscious mind, there are patterns of thinking that are like a second nature, that they just, part of it's because of what you grew up around, or you heard, or what you thought, or what somebody told you, or when somebody told you something at a certain time, actually. And you know why? Some things, quote unquote, stick with us because they were communicated to us at a time, probably coincidentally most of the time. They were also communicated at times when there was a very supportive cycle of life that facilitates communication and imprinting. So like there's a total order in the universe, and to get into that order as soon as possible is the best choice you can make, because everything in the universe is actually subject to a universal order, and it's in place and it's operational, yet it has to be clearly, let's say, recognized, studied, comprehended, and successfully operated with. And then it becomes the best possible thing on an increasing level every day. To live as a master of your life and destiny is absolutely magnificent. It's the greatest way to live. And the thing is, so the reason I'm talking about the subconscious mind, yeah, this thing that's called the subconscious mind, in other words, we're supposed to, for example, we're supposed to have faith in the goodness or the attribute of God's loving kindness or mercy. And if you have an expectation of that, if it's really centered in that, you're really only expecting good. Because, hey, God is almighty, right? He's got eternal power, and you're trusting in him to, provide you with eternally good, eternal power. You're trusting in his attribute of mercy, right? That's smart. That's correct. And intellectually, you can technically comprehend it. That's the first step. Yet still, the so-called subconscious mind may still have thoughts like, okay, yeah, I get that, that's true, but, what if, why, doubt, erase, fire, burn that out, okay? So the thing about doubt and the questioning, almost like an uncertainty thought process, it's very, very low, and it's in the subconscious mind, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to have its place anymore. It's like you can completely trust in the highest good, period. That's, it's actually a process, because you can intellectually comprehend something. I intellectually comprehend the truth, and I know it to be true, even what I'm saying. I know it's the truth. I do. Yet, how come I sometimes have to still force myself to think positive? Think like, all right, I get that. I know that's true. That's how it should be, and that's how it is. But maybe, it's been like 4 or 5 days. Is that going to work? Did we do it right? Are we deserving? All this stuff. See, that has to do with the flesh and blood, intelligent, divine animal existence too. But so if you intellectually comprehend the divine truth, and I do, and so do you, and so should you all, and you do now, that is actually the first step to like clear vision. Because the thing is, it's like we see and know the objective truth to be true, right? So then there's no doubt, and then there's no fear anymore, because it's really become clear, okay? Yet, here's the thing. It's interesting, because there's two things going on. The higher, like the divine mind and the higher self, understands these things and says, yeah, I get that. I know that's true. And that's only a small segment of how massive that is. Like the universe being so, eternally loaded, right? That's only we're only talking about a small amount of the potential that's there. And that too doesn't get covered by words. Almost like ineffable nature of God. You can describe it to you, the everlasting almighty, blessed be his name, and so on, yet that still is like an infinitesimal description of it. So you can intellectually comprehend this, and I do, and I know others do too, yet it takes it takes a certain discipline, a routine discipline, because it's a process. So the idea is, and the reason what I'm getting at and getting into here is to actually live every day with the most legitimately and truly positive personal composure, mindset, expectation, like having good faith all the time, sort of say. and living with the clear comprehension and perception of the reality at hand, that we actually already exist in a universe that is completely filled with, it's like, it's actually all good forever, everything. It has a potential to be that, yet the crux, the turnpike, the key decisive factor involved is us as human beings, in that we basically make our free will the most powerful decision-making tool that we have, to make our God-given free will, right, intelligently obedient to authentic, legitimate, divine guidance, instruction, and wisdom. At that point, you've made the most important decision that you can make. And from that point on, everything just basically gets better and better. So it's like a daily discipline, because, look, I can comprehend the most magnificent divine reality and facts. And these are facts. The things that I'm telling you, they can even be proven by worldly science. That they can't find, the origin of the universe, etc. Right? Even the idea that they're looking for like this hilarious question, what came first, the egg or the chicken? They actually asked that. Human beings have asked me that question. I said, listen, obviously, in the order of things, objectively, first came the chicken, and then that chicken laid an egg, because that's how it works. So in other words, these thoughts are legitimate and true, and they're truths that are universal. It's the case. There is no existing legitimate scientific method or theory that can challenge the veracity, so the truthfulness and the accuracy of what I'm saying.